Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Unleash Your Impact. This is conversations on music, transformation, and impact. And I am very excited to introduce my next guest, who is the first actual artist we're going to have on this show, and a former client and not former friend, and someone who I've always admired for his work ethic, for how dedicated he is to his craft. So I would like to introduce you all to Nick Howard, who is an artist and songwriter from the UK, who's now living in Nashville and has played across the world, opening for so many artists, is the winner of The Voice in Germany. And I am going to hand it over to you, Nick, to tell us more about you and your musical journey.
Well, it's so great to see you, and thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be on this wonderful series, and hope I can share some interesting insight into the crazy mind of a musician slash music industry professional, self-described, and all the other things that I all the other plates that I spin. But yeah, as you mentioned, I'm an artist. I think primarily first and foremost, I still sort of identify as that. Originally from the UK, I've lived in the US for half my life now, which is crazy. But my
Getting
yeah
older.
yeah, getting older. Music career has taken me all over the world, and I've been so fortunate to be able to call it a career, professionally now for 13 plus years. And I now call Nashville home, but somewhere along the journey, I've lived in Europe and London and Berlin and also in LA, where you are, and of course, along a decade in New York,
Where we
and now
met.
we've yeah we met, yeah, and now I've landed in Nashville for the last 5 or so years, and this definitely feels like home for now, which is really nice. But in addition to being an artist, that I've parlayed that side of my life into some other parts of the business. I run a live events and booking agency called Bookable, which we started a few years ago, and also consult and manage developing artists, emerging artists, and try and offer them some wisdom that I've learned along the way, and help them manage and curate the various stages of their careers. And so I keep very busy, and as I said at the outset, I'm just really lucky that I'm able to call this, the industry that I'm in, and still make it still make it work.
And we'll get more into that. I think that you are such a good example of how, we were talking before we hit record a little bit about how so many artists come into this industry with a vision, right? You think this is what it's supposed to look like. And you are such a good example of how you've been able to parlay your talent and your interests and your real motivation into many different things and find your place in the industry, even if it's not exactly what you set out for it to look like. So, before we go into what you thought and where it is now, why don't we talk a little bit about like how you got started? When did you know that this was the thing you wanted to do, and kind of the beginning of your career and how you got started?
Yeah, for sure. I think, sort of generally, I came in, I view life with so many different interests, and I'm excited and interested in so many different things. And it's never been very singular for me. I've never, I wasn't a child prodigy, music prodigy or anything like that. I always knew I wanted to entertain. That was really evident to me as I was a kid. I think for most people, you just want to be heard. And so entertainment was kind of a tool for me to make myself heard, and sort of climb above the noise that we all have in our lives and when we're younger, and I always knew I wanted to entertain, and I love music, and I had such a passion for it, and it was always kind of my track. I I had to go about it how I had to go about it. I went to college and studied computer science, which has nothing to do with music at all, but was something else that interests me, and also
Had
something
that
that I felt like.
fallback for a real job, right?
Yeah, exactly. And what's happened in reality is that's run in parallel to my music career, the whole journey, all 20 years now, of since going to college. Is that I've always had to kind of go back into that track, and it's been so useful in being able to manage my own music career, but now as well, helping to manage others. And so I'm glad that I have such a varied interest in so many different things in life and within even our industry, but outside of it too, because it's all kind of helped me shape the current version of Nick Howard. But you know, ultimately, my biggest passion is to stand on stage and sing songs, and I'm so glad I still get to do that sometimes. Um, but I really do get joy out of these other things as well. I love creating. I think that's another thing I've realized is that it doesn't necessarily have to be something I'm creating for myself, but as long
Hmm.
as I'm creating, um, that sort of passion is fulfilled. And so whether that's with another artist and helping them achieve some of their dreams and goals, or it's by creating some of the events that we create through Bookable, I get that same sort of sense of fulfillment, whether it's me singing behind a microphone or behind the scenes. And so it's certainly been varied. And to your point about things never going the way you foresee them, I never really had a sort of thought of oh, it must go like this. And as a result, I've always been able to walk through any crack in a door, and see where that door might lead.
Hmm.
And I think that's been one of the constant benefits of my journey has been that willingness to walk through a door if I see there's a crack in it and just see where it leads, because that's led to some of the most exciting things in my life so far.
Exactly. And being open to those opportunities. I think that maybe that came naturally to you, and that's why you've been able to do what you've done and to remain optimistic and positive throughout. And then there are so many artists and clients that I have where we have to more cultivate that mindset a little bit because they're attached to a certain look, to a certain
Hmm.
vision. But being able to be open to those things is really what's going to create your success in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. And I try and you know I try and share that wisdom with other artists that we work with as well, and that the more open you are to opportunity, the more opportunity will come your way. It's just the reality of it. So yeah, I like flying the flag for that
Yeah.
mantra.
Well, on the artist side, I don't think, probably when you started out, you probably didn't envision yourself winning The Voice in Germany and having a
Yeah.
whole huge career over there. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's so much irony in that because when I was growing up, I was obsessed with the US. And the first time I went to New York, I was 18, I think, or 17. I got to go visit my sister who had moved over earlier. And I love the optimism of the US. I love the can do anything attitude.
Mhm.
And so the big goal for me as I was younger, as a teenager and into my early 20s, was like get to New York and figure it out from there. And as I went through that journey and built a little music following in New York and was playing some shows and getting an opportunity to open for some bigger bands, that led to touring opportunities in Europe because I somehow managed to hustle my way onto tours of American bands who were going over and saying, "Well, I'm European. You should take me on your tour as an opener," and it worked somehow. And
You're like, oh, we don't
that
have to
then,
deal with visas. Great.
yeah, they were just like, "Sure, whatever," and just an easy. So, and that led to just that journey beginning back in Europe, ironically. So, at one point during, I don't know, 2009 and 12, 13, I was just going over all the time, opening for bands, building my own fan base. And especially in that part of the world, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Netherlands, they really resonated there, more than anywhere else at that time. And again, just being willing to go and explore what that journey could end up being led to me getting a record deal over there. And then The Voice, which had started fairly recently, around 2012, 11, 12,
Mhm.
asked me if I wanted to be on the show in Germany. And I was like, let's go. Why not? I never say no to things that I think could have exciting results. So I learned German to be able to communicate with the judges, and probably embarrass myself on the national television show, and probably got voted, out of sympathy reasons more than any. But
Oh no.
yeah, somehow I ended up winning this show. But it's I sort of credit like my New York journey a lot with the outcome of winning that show, because I'd played so many gigs in New York, and it's so hard to get people to come and listen to you, or to get people to come to your show and then to listen to you, or
Hmm.
playing bar gigs where people are watching Monday Night Football and you're trying to get them to listen to your original songs. Once I walked on stage on a TV show like that where everyone's listening to you, I was like, this is the easiest thing ever. So I credit that New York part of my journey with allowing me to have some success back over in Europe and be able to go on that show and
Yeah.
make the most of it and all that kind of stuff. But yes, that's the very shortened version of how I ended up winning The
Well,
Voice.
and I think you hit something so important there is just that you never said no to anything, and
Mhm.
especially in the beginning of your career, how important that is. There are so many people who, would turn down their noses at something like The Voice or, no, I'm more of an artist. I don't want to be on those kinds of shows. But that attitude of like, I have no idea where this can lead, right? And I can make
Mhm.
this my own. What ultimately led to you being there, to winning, and to amplifying your fan base in that area of the world also.
Yeah, for sure. I particularly like The Voice because I knew that if you got to a certain part of the show, you could sing an original song, and that was
Yeah,
really important to me. So, had it been another show, I don't know if I would have, had the same
and
made
it's
the same
open.
choice. But it was such a respected show, and
Yeah,
still is. But especially around then, it was like, oh wow, they're casting like people who are doing this for a living
real
already,
artists,
and
right?
yeah, and that was really appealing to me. And I'm envious of people who can say no. I mean, it takes a lot still for me to say no to something
Mm-hmm.
because as basically a freelancer, which is what we all are in this industry, you never feel like you should be turning anything down.
Right.
It's very, very difficult. I come from very sort of humble beginnings where things just weren't there wasn't abundance of opportunity, certainly wasn't any money or anything like that, and I find it really hard still to say no to things. So I'm always envious of people who can say no to things, but I also, like you said, encourage people to really think very hard before they turn something down because
Yeah,
you
and
don't want to be business.
it's not that you have to say yes to everything, but it's being open. It's not just having, always questioning that first initial reaction, because I've seen it so
Hmm.
many times where people are like, oh no, I would never do that. And it's just like this
Hmm.
gut initial reaction, and then like take a moment, think about it, question it. Why are you saying no? What are the pros and the cons of it? But also, you never know where these things will lead. So as
For
long as
sure.
it's not where you have to sacrifice your integrity or your artistry or who you are, but you get to make it whatever you want it to be, whatever
Yeah.
you do.
Exactly. I have this conversation with people about Eurovision a lot, which is, as a big song competition
Yeah,
in Europe that predates The Voice and American Idol
yeah,
and Pop Idol and all the different things. And you think ABBA were discovered through that, Celine Dion the same. And I think even with that show, even though some of it can be quite cheesy, if you go on in front of all those people watching and you just do a great song and a great performance, then you've just had that opportunity. So why would you not do it? So
exactly.
I have that conversation with people a lot. So watch this space. Maybe one day I'll do Eurovision once
There you go.
short time.
I heard they were bringing it to the US also, or some
Yeah,
version of
they show it here now, and they have like a guest country every year.
it.
So
Yeah,
like Australia were in it a couple of years ago.
right.
I'm sure the US will be in it at some point
Yes.
as a guest. And yeah, it's a fun show. I've had a lot of friends go on it and do very well and just have a great experience. And um, anyway, so yeah, no, you always explore the opportunity is the message, I suppose.
Amazing. So one of the things I love about your music is it's just, I always feel when I listen to one of your songs, it's like talking to a friend. Like it's
Mm.
just this kind of like, oh, like whether it's you just need to be in a good mood and just chat about something, or it's like you're feeling a certain way and you just hear that friend being like, hey, we all go through this, and it's
Hmm.
just has that positive vibe, which I think is when you get to know you as a person, that's just who you are. And it comes
Yeah.
through so strongly in your music. So, you talked about your humble beginnings and things weren't always easy. Like, where do you think that comes from? Just being able to like stay so positive.
Well, I'm glad that's what you hear. Thank you for saying that. I mean, music for me is comfort, and you listen to things that comfort you when you're feeling happy or when you're feeling sad or when you're excited. Your choice of what you listen to usually reflects how you're feeling,
Mm-hmm.
or it reflects a question that you have. Um, and so I write the same way. My songs are me trying to make sense of the world, trying to make something positive out of something negative. I always say Amy Winehouse said that once, and I just thought it was so spot on about why you write songs. Finding the positive in the negative, and um, so I love that comes through, and that people find that, or that you mentioned that you find that. I played a show last week, as I mentioned, here in Nashville, and I don't play live as much as I used to, so it's such a special thing for me to be able to do it. And somebody came up to me after the show and said, "Thank you for singing about what everyone was feeling but didn't know how to express it," you know?
Oh,
And I just thought that was the biggest
that's the
compliment
best
of,
thing
you know.
ever.
Yeah, the truth is, like, you can try and sugarcoat things in life. You can also pretend that things are great, but ultimately, life can be really tough for people sometimes. It can also be really amazing for people. And so I try and sing about both. And
Yeah.
if you're having a bad day, I've got a song that will let you know about a bad day I had, and you let you know you're not alone. But if you're ready to celebrate something or get up for something, hopefully I've got some songs about that too. So I try and write music that comforts me first and foremost, and then I think just by doing that, it connects and resonates with people in that same way. So it's
Yeah.
like,
And I think it's just your music definitely speaks to, what we call the 50-50 of life.
hmm
You've got the bad days, you've got the good days, and nobody's one or the other. We all have both. Like life, that's just
absolutely,
what life is. But it's not about always, it's what you make of it. If you understand that's what it is, and you're not constantly trying to fight the bad part, but you're just
hmm
embracing it, like, oh, this is part of life. And hearing a song like that from you is just like, oh yeah, okay, that's everybody. Everybody has
yeah.
that. It's just
And
part of
also,
life.
I think the other message that I try and convey, and this is genuinely how I feel, is that you just don't know what's coming around the corner. So
Yes.
I just by default wake up every day expecting something good to happen versus the opposite. And like that's curbed a little bit as I've got older, and realism sets in a tiny bit, but I'm still a generally optimistic
Mm-hmm.
person. um my parents, I lost them both about 6 or 7 years ago, sadly, and they were uniquely lovely but flawed characters. I think is an okay, acceptable way to describe describe my mom and dad. And I like to think that I have the best parts of both. And so my dad's sort of biggest, uh, his best and worst quality was his just like unfallible optimism, and
Yeah.
literally could be facing down like the worst situation, but still think tomorrow was going to be the best day ever. And like unfortunately have got some of that, in me.
So
And
huge.
I'm so glad that that's how I perceive the world. It's like, because then it actually just it's self-fulfilling, because it drives you to then expect that outcome and act in accordance, and so that's more likely
Exactly.
to happen, yield a good result, because negative thoughts will tend to lead to negative,
Results.
reality and results. Yeah.
I mean, that's the entire basis of any kind of cognitive behavioral therapy or coaching that I do is our thoughts create our reality, right?
hmm
So whether you're lucky to just have that natural ability to have those positive thoughts and have that kind of hopeful way of thinking about things, or if that's something you actually have to work on and cultivate, that is possible. And once you're able to change that, it literally changes it changes the energy you give off, but it changes the actions you take. It changes how you show up in the world. And that's going to directly change what happens
For
in your
sure,
life.
for sure. And when I say that I have that disposition of optimism, I don't want that to sound like I don't have like many moments during a day or an hour where I
Of
also touch
course.
the other side of things in the spectrum, because everybody does that. And again, musically, you'll hear that. I think in the music I write, it sort of touches on both feelings, but where I try and end up is the optimism. And yeah, that's a journey, and it takes effort.
It does take effort. So
Yeah.
what are some of the practices, or have you worked with anyone specifically to work on your mindset and to work on that? But what are some of the practices you have to put in that effort to maintain that positive?
I think one thing in general, as I've got older, is that I really noticed the correlation between physical health and mental health. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, an active body is a great way to make sure that I'm giving my brain everything I can to, all the things it needs to try and see the world with bright colors. And so I try so hard to be as healthy as I can in terms of exercise and things like that. And also, although as simple as it sounds, it just really correlates. It has such a big bearing on my mental health, that when I go through periods of not working out or playing sports, or whatever it might be, I just notice that like decline in
Yep.
my disposition. And then the ability to receive help and know that that's okay. And um there's so many people that want to help you in life, and I think once you recognize that that isn't some kind of failing of your own to need help and accept it, the better off you'll be for it. And so, um, we were talking about therapy a little bit before we went live here, and that's been a benefit to me over the last few years. It also gives you another sort of viewpoint and how you might be feeling and what you might be able to do to fix something that's wrong, or uh, help you handle certain situations better. And so that sort of third party view of it all, I found really helpful, and practices that you can use to try and correct certain things that you don't love about yourself, or the way
Yeah.
you handle things has been really useful. So definitely physical health is really important for me, but also I've found, seeking some mental health as therapy as well has been really useful.
Yeah. And one of the things, I think is happening a lot more, but I think it's so important that artists like you talk about is the importance of taking care of your mental health in this industry. We know there's a huge mental health crisis in the world, but in our industry in particular, we see it a lot. It's a tough industry, especially with artists and crew who are out on the road. It can be where wear and tear, not just on your body, but on your mind. So recognizing that asking for help and seeking that help is not a failure, but it's actually a strength. We are not created to go through this world alone. And just the
Mm-hmm.
way we've evolved, the way our brains are, is we have a very narrow view. We can't see what sometimes somebody, especially a therapist or a coach, may be trained to see, that we're not seeing inside our own heads. We may be able to see it in other people, but we don't see it for ourselves. So having that extra support, to
Mm-hmm.
just be like, keep you accountable, keep you going, but also to show you what you might not be seeing and help you reframe things and think about
For
things
sure.
differently, changes everything.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's really important. And yeah, our industry, like anyone's or anybody's life, is just it's life isn't easy. It's challenging, and as it can be as great as it can be awful, and people deserve help through it, and we can help each other for sure. But there's also other resources and ways to help you along the journey, that are out there.
Yes. Yes. So you mentioned a little bit about trying different things, leaving your artistry, and then always coming back to it. What is
Yeah.
it, do you think, that that makes you keep coming back to, I'm an artist first and foremost, even if you haven't been performing as much, or if you've been focusing on other things, you're always coming back to that?
It's ultimately, I think, and it's something I've been discussing with my crazy inner self a lot over the last 5 or 6 years. I think ultimately I just love it so much. I love a room full of people that I can entertain, or that have never heard a song of mine, and I want to make a fan of by the end of the night. I love going on stage and playing a song that makes somebody laugh, or make somebody cry, or saying something on stage that makes someone laugh. Like, these are all things that bring me joy. Um, Again, it's the reason that I started performing, and I love songwriting and I love recording, but ultimately, like, all of that's kind of worthless to me if you don't have a chance to go on stage
Mm.
and perform it live. And like a lot of artists, that doesn't do it for them. They actually prefer the creation more than the live performance, and that's great. I mean, somewhat enviable of people that don't need to go out there on the road, because that's such a chore in itself. But like, that's what I love to do. And so, although my life is, and I'm really grateful for these other things that I'm able to do within our industry, but ultimately, I still am so glad that I get that chance to go on stage and sing songs that I wrote to people who I hope might like them. And ultimately, that's the reason I started doing it in the first place. And
Right.
it also, for me, is, I think, the artist side of my life is the one that has taken me on the most fun journeys. Like, I call
Mhm.
it the adventure, and all the great sort of moments, or a lot of the great moments in my life, have come as a result of pursuing music as an artist and seeing where that might lead, and knowing that there's always that possibility it could take you into a really cool thing that you never otherwise would have been able to experience. um, just keeps that flame going enough for me to keep doing it.
Mhm.
And you just, because I never know where the next single might take me. And it's just been such a cool journey. I don't want it to end. And so I think that's the other reason that so, likely to always go back to the artist thing once in a while, just for that sense of adventure.
Yeah, it's the sense of adventure and the you feel the impact you're making when you're on stage. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where, we always talk about coming back to your why. Why did you get into this in the first place? And everything else you might try to do is somehow going to be connected to your why, which, if you want to talk a little bit about Bookable and what you've created there, I mean, obviously you feel the power in live music. You feel the power in being up there on stage and being somebody in the audience, getting to hear that and feel that connection to the artist. So
Yeah, for
tell
sure.
us a little bit about Bookable.
It's There's sort of a multifaceted reason of why we started it. And when I say we, it's my wife and I, that started this company. And the when I was in, my wife's an event planner, so she has that in her blood, and bringing people together for a purpose. And I have that as well as the musical side of it too. I remember being in school and we would put on like these concerts for people within our school. We'd rent out the theater. We'd book the theater and then put a show on, like a little mini festival or a club night, and we would showcase like some of the musicians at school. And I remember that sense of like fulfillment after doing that was so cool, and working with other people to like achieve that. So that's always been something I've been really interested in. In fact, even before we started Bookable, I started my own music festival in Germany, and we had a good few artists that very well come over from the US and perform, and it was really great. And I got that same sense of fulfillment from putting on that festival. I played it as well, obviously, but I also just had just as much joy as I did, seeing if we could pull something off like that. And so I've always had that interest. And then after The Voice, I did so much touring, and it was the same. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it was the same kind of, headline the clubs, open for some bigger bands, headline a bigger club, open for some bigger bands. The constant cycle of doing the same thing over and over again in the same cities. And we just thought, like, there's got to be like other avenues here in the live music world to explore. And started toying around with things like private concerts and house concerts, and any way to experience live music that wasn't like I'm going to sell tickets to this club and
Right.
hope to break even. So we use me as a guinea pig, which is what we typically always do, and we got great success, doing that. And then we thought, well, I can't be the only person that could benefit from this. So we started a platform, and the original idea was for it to be a bit like Airbnb, where if you wanted to book somebody to play your party or your company event or whatever, you could go on the website and find a musician and book them through the website, and that would be that, and we'd have nothing to do with it. But what we kind of learned is that putting on any kind of like musical event requires a little bit more hand holding than just passing you off to a musician,
Yeah.
and say, there you go, good luck.
Yeah, your average
And
person doesn't know, what kind of backline and all of that
yeah, all
you
the
need.
thing,
And
even if it's just a singer-songwriter, there's always a
yeah,
question of how we're going to make this happen.
right.
um, Even though most musicians are so self-sufficient and can do so much themselves, it just requires a little bit more than just an easy sort of Airbnb like transaction,
Mhm.
So we were starting to realize that, and then the pandemic happened, and that just like squashed everything for a minute and forced us, like it did so many people, into a corner where we had to really think about how to make this work and how to pivot. And as part of that journey, during I don't know, midway through 2020, there was just no live music happening in Nashville, which of all the places in the world that, obviously nowhere had live music, but like here it was like dreadful,
Yeah.
like there's so many musicians here that were out of work, and people were craving for like some kind of human interaction. So we found a way to put on live socially distanced concerts with, everyone was, the tables were distanced, the capacities were limited, everyone wore masks. So we paired up live music and wine tastings, just to get people a chance. And one of the first ones we did, we could only have 25 people there, as was was allowed from the city. But they would like sell within like an hour, because people was just so desperate, and musicians were so desperate to have a chance to play. So we do pop-up shows outdoors always as well, for safety reasons. Around Nashville, we started doing rooftop shows at hotels and partnering with different people, and this thing became really popular, and we started getting a lot of press out of it. And that kind of helped our company evolve a little bit into facilitators of live music
Right.
experiences versus just like some kind of platform. And so the people we work with now, we work with tons of like corporate clients and things like that, and helping them bring live music into their events when they come through Nashville or beyond. But we also help program live music in hotels and restaurants and all these places around town, because this city is really unlike anywhere else in the world, where it's not unusual to have live music in like the, you know, the airport, the restaurant. Easy, sorry. You know, all over the place. So that's how it's evolved, and we have, you know, a de facto roster. Nobody's like signed with us, but we just have artists we really like working with, of like 50 different artists, and we try and get people work, and like it gives us a great fulfillment being able to do that. And it, you know, suffices that creative
Yeah,
passion and creating something. And so it's just awesome. Yeah, we have like 20 shows a week or something like that, where we've got something going on and keeping people busy, and musicians employed, and it's awesome. I love
I
how it's
love it.
evolved.
I love it. And it's such a great example of how to pivot, right? And that was one of the, as hard as COVID was for this industry, and especially for live music, it was also one of the gifts of forcing people into creativity and how to pivot. And that's just one of the life lessons that we all need. We all need to be able to pivot when things are not going exactly according to plan, or when something outside of us happens that does. It's instead of, it's so easy to just say, all right, screw that, gonna go try something completely different, versus saying, this is why I'm in this. I'm going to stay connected to my why of what's important and
Hmm.
what I believe in, and find a way to make it work. And that's just such a beautiful example.
Yeah, it's constant crisis management, basically. You
Yeah.
know, it's like
Well, yeah.
one thing after another. But like that ability to pivot and to be flexible, and to not assume you are so smart that your original idea was the one. You know, I think if you look at
Exactly.
any successful company or person, they've
Or
all had
artists.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, artist, everyone has to react as much as they want to dictate the storyline. It's like, you know, life will tell you what
Yeah. And
what
not
it
only
is that
does
you know.
life happen and the world change, but we change as people, right?
Hmm.
And our interests evolve, but staying connected to that why and to that purpose and that integrity, which I just, again, just think you do so beautifully,
Oh, thank
is
you.
what's going to lead to fulfillment, to
Yeah.
success for sure, but also to just like feeling fulfilled and like you're living out your purpose.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think we've got a nice balance going on, and I hope that we can continue to spin all these different plates, you know, and keep them all kind of firing on all cylinders as best we can. But it's, yeah, like I said at the beginning, I'm just grateful to still be able to work within our industry, and to parlay some of the wisdom that I've gained over the last 20 years of doing this, you
Yeah.
know, to other people is kind of a privilege, really. So I hope that I'm doing it well.
If you had one piece of advice, obviously you work with a lot of younger developing
Right.
artists. If you had like one piece of advice that you see you're telling them over and over again, what would that be?
You know, it's, I mean, with the risk of sounding cliche, sometimes cliches are cliches for a reason, but
Exactly.
I do think there's a patience battle. You know, that if you are willing to be more patient than everybody else, you're more likely to get an opportunity that someone else might have just given up on.
Mhm.
You also have to be willing to take a chance on something that you're not 100% sure is going to work out. You know, and I've lived that motto, so I can stand by it. Um, you know, I learned German in 2 months for just an opportunity to go on a TV show and have like no one buzz, you know, for me, and just embarrass myself, you know. But like I figured the upside was, the risk was worth that, you know. So I think being more patient than everybody else, and also just being willing to do the thing that someone else won't do,
Yeah.
is a good way of giving yourself like a leg up in our industry and in life, really, in general. And that's, yeah, those two come to mind. I feel like I preach those two things a lot.
I love that you're saying just being willing to embarrass yourself too, because it's like, I mean, we say that jokingly, but part of what it is being willing to suck and show up anyway, right? And whether you're
Yeah,
an artist or a professional in the industry, I mean, I tell this to myself every day, even doing something like this, these interviews, is you only get better and you only learn by doing it. And you just have to
for
be
sure.
willing to suck and do it
Yeah,
anyway.
absolutely. I'll give you another example of that. I think this is 2004 or 2005 maybe, and my roommate in New York worked for an events company, and they were doing they were doing a sponsorship at a Jack Johnson festival out in the Gorge Amphitheater in Washington, which is like one of the most beautiful venues in the country. And they the idea was to have on the side stage at the Gorge is like a permanent Red Rocks kind of stage, and then it has a smaller stage next to it. Where they'll have very often like bands playing before a big headliner like Jack Johnson at the time. And the activation was they wanted someone to host like a singer-songwriter karaoke. At least this is how it was pitched to me. Sponsored by Nokia, which tells you how long ago this was. And I had to go and audition for these people at this events company, and the agency basically for Nokia. And as in my head, I was like, well, I can host a singer songwriter, like, karaoke. I can host a singer songwriter stage, and I'll play some songs, invite other people, because, at a Jack Johnson concert, like 50% of the audience is going to know a few
Right.
songs on the guitar. So I go in, and obviously what I had in mind wasn't quite what the agency had in mind. And I went from my 9 to 5. So I was wearing like my shirt and my slacks, from being in the office, my 9 to 5 job. And so they were kind of like, who's this guy? And they were like, okay, so what we've got in mind is like, you'll do like impressions of like different artists throughout history. And then I'll encourage people to come up and do the same. And I was like, oh, that's not what I had in mind. But in that one moment, I was like, listen, you can either try and get this gig, get paid like, I think it was like $1,000, which is probably more money than I'd ever had in my life
Right.
in 2004. And have the opportunity to quote unquote play at a Jack Johnson show. And if you recall, that went on my bio for like the next, the next 10 years.
Of course,
I think we led with that.
that.
Shared festivals with the likes of Jack Johnson. But anyway, so I started doing, and they were shouting out names of artists: Elvis, Mick Jagger, Beagle, Michael Jackson, whatever. And I would just flip and just sing and dance. And I got so into it. And it was just 4 people in like an office building and me in my work clothes just doing this. I think for one of them, I slid across the floor on my knees, ripped my pants.
Oh
My
my
knee was
goodness.
bleeding, and I just stood up like sweaty. And they were like, "All right, I think you got it. You can do it." And so it's that willingness to make a fool of yourself, sometimes to the point where your knees bleed, And I
There's
walked
our
out
sound
there.
clip right there.
Yeah, my pants were yeah, whatever. But I walked out sweaty and just bleeding. I was like, well, I got a gig. And then, as I said, then I went to go and play a stage with Jack Johnson, and had that on my bio for the next 10 years. So
Yeah, I love it.
worth taking a
I
risk.
love it.
Yeah.
We take risks, and sometimes they pay out, sometimes the payoff is there, and sometimes they're not, but you still learn from them, and you still develop that muscle to do things that are uncomfortable and to be willing
Definitely.
to take those risks. So they're always important.
And ultimately, you just never want to have any regret. You never want to be able to say, could I have done more
Yeah.
for that opportunity? And like, with this I have this opportunity at the moment. I've got a song that's just come out through a label, and I haven't been with a label for 5 or 6 years. So it's an amazing opportunity that I wasn't expecting at this point of my career. And I just wanted to be able to do everything I could possibly do to give it the best chance of success. Like, you can't dictate what the industry is going to do with your
Yeah.
song, if they're going to play it on radio or playlist it. But if you can do your part, then at least you can look back on it and say, I did everything I could. The rest was just not under my control. And
A
so
million
that's why it's
percent.
really important as well. Yeah.
And when you do that is when I think you are going to have the most impact, which is what we're talking about all the time, is like when you're going to be able to be on stage and connect with the audience, when you're going to be able to parlay your talent into just helping people in whatever way is meaningful for you and makes sense for you. Like if you're being willing to show up no matter what, even when it's a little uncomfortable or you don't know what to expect, people are going to feel that. And I think that's just
Yeah.
one of the things that makes you who you are, is people feel that when they're around you, when they're listening to your music, they're feeling that like, oh, they're getting the real you.
Yeah, definitely. You have to be a little bit fearless, and just go for it. And then, yeah, hopefully that comes through and people can empathize with that and see that it's genuine. That's really important too. There's a great German word that we don't have a word for in English, and it's one of the few, but it's sympathisch. And so the direct translation would be like sympathetic, but that doesn't really make sense in the English language.
Mm-hmm.
but what they really mean is somebody they can empathize with who seems genuine.
Mm.
And I kept hearing that when I was on I've heard that a lot over the years when I've done interviews or on The Voice, and I just thought that's a nice attribute to try and strive for, is
It
to be
is.
genuine, but it's a great word that I wish we had a word for.
Yeah.
Um,
And I mean, it's almost, I talk about it more. It's like being in integrity, right? Like
yeah,
always being in integrity with who you are and what's important to you and the impact you want to make. Like
yeah,
I call
definitely.
the I in impact integrity, you know?
Yeah, I like that. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Well, what's the rest of the acronym? Now I need to know.
So it's integrity, motivation, possibility, action, confidence, and trust.
Oh, that's great.
I'm
I
gonna
love
I'm
that.
gonna do a little workshop on that soon, but
That's good. It'll be good if you hadn't thought of the other ones and I just made you think about it on the spot. But
no,
clearly
I
you've done your homework
I've done
already.
I've done
Yeah.
that. I've done that work a little bit. But yeah, being in integrity is, to me, it's staying true to your why, your motive, why you're doing it, and just always being willing to be uncomfortable, but being genuine, not faking
Yeah.
it, just being who you are, and that comes through in your music or whatever you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing I'd share, if anyone's interested in this, but like this is something that I has helped me recently as well a lot. And in the arts, when you are constantly putting yourself out there for judgment, like every post you make, every piece of music you release, you are asking to be judged,
Mm-hmm.
essentially by doing it. And as a result, people will create narratives about you individually, collectively. And if you listen too much, you start to believe some of the narratives. And so I've learned recently, and again, this is great advice that was given to me by a wonderful therapist, is the importance of like dictating the narrative yourself,
Yes.
especially if you hit a roadblock, or a moment of difficulty, or things are really hard, or you've been judged, or something's failed out of your control. The ability to take back the narrative is so important and so healthy for you. And I'm only just realizing that. But I think I've been doing that all these years anyway, because
Without
if I
realizing.
hadn't, I wouldn't
Yeah.
have kept going back to Germany and playing shows and putting out music and things like that. So by constantly putting out music and playing shows, I probably have always been doing that, but I've never really had it verbalized in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's such a like, great piece of advice. And so, whatever taking back the narrative means, maybe you're an artist and you had a disappointing release or something like that. Um, you still have the ability to go out and play a show.
Yeah,
You still have the ability to go and to play your song and post it and know that it's a great song. And so, regardless of what other people think or whatever narratives they create, it's very important that you stay in control of your own, because it's your life.
for sure.
So
And that
I just thought it was great advice.
there's no one thing that can happen, no one failure that is going to determine what you do for the rest of your career, for the rest of your
Right.
life. Like you
Yeah.
always have that choice on what you make it mean and what you're going to do next.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and your success in life should never be based on other people's perceptions or
for sure not.
expectations.
One of
You
the
know?
things I've heard, and I always say to myself, but I tell my clients as well, is like, just let them be wrong about you. People are going
Hmm.
to have their own opinions, which is usually more about them than it is about you. It's
Always,
coming
yeah,
from their experience. So let them have it and let them be wrong about you. And it also doesn't mean that you have to sit there and read every single negative comment. You're allowed to just
yeah,
block,
absolutely,
delete.
yeah, definitely, definitely. John Mayer says, "Don't try and what does he say? Don't try and eat the monster that's eating you.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you end up
Exactly.
being the thing that
When
they."
you talk to the haters, there's always going to be people that are sitting there making negative comments.
Yeah,
And the people doing that are not the ones who are out there succeeding.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, Beyonce is just the easiest one that comes to mind, but she is not sitting there looking at other artists and writing negative comments on Instagram about
Very
somebody's
true.
life. The people who are doing it there's probably a little piece of them that wishes that they could do what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
And so it's just remembering where that's coming from, but like you said, this is your gift to the world. This is your life, your talent. This is the impact you're meant to have in the world. It doesn't really matter what some people are going to think, and you're going to just waste away your time if you're trying to convince them. Talk to the people
yeah,
who you connect with and who understand you and who you're having the most impact on.
yeah. that's another, we can keep quoting people here, but like Chris Martin says that too. He's like, at some point as a band, we started concentrating on the people that were at our shows and not the people that weren't.
Exactly.
That was another
There you
good one,
go.
you know.
And again, that's who you're going to impact. That's who you are
Yeah,
meant to talk to. You're not meant to be for everybody in this world.
yeah, for sure. There you go.
I love it. All right. Well, I want to do a little lightning round here.
Fun.
You talked about how important physical health is, and I always talk about how music is such a good tool for embodiment when we're trying to process emotions or work through energy or anything like that. Music is the best tool for that. So I always like to think of what's your favorite song or artist to listen
Oh,
to when you are sad?
I'll give you current, right? Because
Okay. Yeah. And
it
it
always
always
changes.
changes. Yeah.
I love this guy, Patrick Droney.
Oh,
You
I
know
don't
him?
know.
You'd really like him. He's
Okay.
wonderful artist. I've got a little playlist here. Sometimes like my family will say like, "Can you create a play?" I'm opening it up here as we
I'm
speak.
gonna make you share your playlist with me now.
Yeah, no problem. And I'll just like throw some stuff that I've been listening to recently. But yeah, he's got a couple of great sort of sad singer-songwriter songs which I've just really
Love it.
resonated with recently. So I'll say a couple of his tunes for now.
Okay, Patrick Droney.
Yeah, a song called Glitter is the one that if we're talking about being sad, that's the one I would go for it. Oh, did I start it? Something
You
started.
did.
Oh,
We
weird.
can.
I wonder why that started. That's so weird. Okay. Yeah, so
Love
there you
it.
go.
All right. What about when you need a confidence boost?
Let me open my little playlist here because now you're putting me on the spot.
I
It's
know,
kind of
I
hard.
didn't warn you.
And if I just want to like, if I want a confidence boost, I mean, this might be an applicable song or band for other questions as well, but I
Mhm.
think the 1975 are just
Oh
like such
yeah,
a great band, and like that guy exudes confidence no matter what is going
totally.
on, and like it sort of allows you to he's sort of permitting everybody to be like outrageously unforgiving and unashamed on stage, and I
Yeah,
love that. So I'm like, well, if he's doing that so successfully, you can do whatever, you know. So I'd say
love that.
1975, yeah,
Love that. And I think that's one of the powers of music and of artists in general is you're giving permission to whoever's listening, you're giving permission to them to be whatever they need to be,
to
to
feel,
feel whatever
yeah.
they're feeling.
Hmm.
All right, last one is what about when you're just angry and raging and you just need to like, ugh.
Rage Against the Machine, maybe. No,
Yeah. Hey, it works.
I listened to my sort of like the heaviest of music I'll listen to is like the Who, and so I fell in love with the Who's album Who's Next when I was in college. My dad actually shared it with me. I remember very well, and there's just some great anthemic, choruses and lines on that record that I'll just kind of blast really, really loudly in the car and just get all my frustrations out.
I love it. All
And
right, and
maybe
one
also some
more.
solos.
As
Yeah.
a this is as a fan, not as an artist. What's the last concert you went to?
Ooh, who did we just go and see? Oh man, why am I blanking? Well, I went to my own concert last week, of course. I was
Of
a
course.
fan. Do you know who I did see? Well, it was a while ago. Well, a few months ago, I guess, right before the end of the year.
Mhm.
I saw Michael Bublé here
Oh,
in
fun.
Nashville at the British Phone. Yeah, it was very fun. Yeah, the best recent concert I've seen would either be the 1975 they played here in Nashville,
Uh-huh.
and it was one of the top 5 gigs I've ever seen. Um, I saw John Mayer last year, but I've seen him so many times. He's always amazing.
Yeah,
The
I've
other
never
best
seen
concert that I've seen, and it was just right before the pandemic, was Casey Musgraves on her Golden Hour
fun.
tour, and it was just a flawless record with a flawless musician, and a flawless gig, and the energy was just perfect, you know. So that 1975 show and Casey Musgraves
Love it.
show, two of my favorite concerts. But Buble was great, you know. A few of my friends were in the band. I didn't even realize played in his band, so I was
Oh,
extra
fun.
stoked. So I was like, "Yay!" This is
It's
neat.
always fun. I love when I'm like just somewhere and like this is just one of the things of being in the industry and you like see some you're going to see something and then all of a sudden you see like, oh, hey, so and so's on stage, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool thing to see the journeys that people we've known for the last 15 or so years have
Totally.
gone on, and I love seeing people pop up all over the place that, you know, places you're not expecting them. And that's one of the nice things about what we do. It's a tight industry at the end of the day.
For sure. Amazing.
Despite
So
the
let's close out.
40,000 songs. Yeah, sorry,
You
yeah.
have a new single out. So let's tell everybody about your new single and where they can find you and your music.
My new single, Rollercoaster, came out about 10 days ago now. And of course, it's everywhere you can listen to music. I was inspired by just being able to go out in the world again last year and be on tour and be inspired by humans all over the place. And was lucky to travel again. And, you know, I'm always reminded, because we're so led to believe that people are so different. If you watch the news for 5 minutes, you'll think that, you know, that everybody hates each other and that we're all just so different. But the truth, you know, the reality is that actually that humans are so similar. We're way more similar than we realize. And when we work together and when we see each other as humans, then I think we do our best work. And so Rollercoaster is just another reminder of that, that we all go through ups and downs in life and twists and turns. So we're all on the same journey together. And that's what the song's about. And it's, but again, with the classic Nick Howard optimism at the end of it.
Of
So
course.
it's out now. It's available everywhere. And my socials are at Nick Howard Music pretty much everywhere. You can go and listen to me and see my silly dances on TikTok and all the rest of it.
Amazing. And I'll put all of those links in the notes under this YouTube. And if you found this conversation interesting, inspiring, hit like and subscribe. And if you realize how important it is to be in integrity and take that work deeper in yourself so that you have that success and that impact you want to have in your own career, hit the link below and schedule a one-on-one consult and see maybe if coaching is right for you. Thank you so much, Nick. It was so fun to have this conversation with you. And it's been so fun to, you know, even from afar, watch how you've iterated and everything you've done and that positivity you've kept throughout all these years. And it's just been so fun to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for being such an early believer in what I was trying to do. I'm still very grateful for that. And it's so nice to reconnect and to chat about it all. And you know, I heard some other last thing, a piece of advice is that that I heard recently is that as much as everybody wants to be a self-started and only thank themselves for, you know, any success they have in life, the reality is that as you go through life, there's people that want to help you and give you a helping hand. So
Yeah.
thank you for being one of those people in mine, and I appreciate it. And it's so great to reconnect and to chat.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome.